In today's economy, more people than ever are looking to buy and sell businesses. But how do you do it? Welcome to the Deal Board, presented by Transworld Business Advisors. Straight talk about real deals and real people. Listen to stories, interviews, and expert advice to help your business sale, merger, or acquisition process. Now, here are your business exit experts, Andy and Jessica.
Welcome back, everybody. And today we have a great show talking about world events and how they affect small business owners. And, you know, we recently in the U.S. just had kind of a large economic event of a government shutdown for, what was it, 35 days, Andy, right?
It was the biggest one ever.
Yep. So that kind of inspired the show, but we also have some great insight from also the UK and with Brexit coming up. So a lot of information for small business owners on how these large economic events can really affect your business.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you could read any book, The World is Flat. You could read, we're all connected these days through banking, through currency exchanges, through trade. I mean, the world is literally flat. I mean, the internet has brought us all together. And so anything that affects one, it's like squeezing the balloon. You squeeze one side, the air goes to the other. So there's lots of things that are affecting. And of course, it trickles down to small business.
Right. Yeah. And it affects our world too. Buying and selling businesses, any major economic event is going to affect, potentially how much businesses are selling for, but also how long the deals are going to take to close and any additional regulations or hoops that we have to jump through to transition these businesses.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen in South Florida, we've seen people coming from all different countries because of those countries have economic issues. We've seen people leave South Florida because of thinking that resiliency in the future, water issues and population growth. I mean, people move around the country, even taxes. So lots of things affect the way small business operates and our deal flow.
Right. I think one great thing that's Michael Ziff said from the UK too was he just touched on the resiliency of business owners and the resiliency of economies of, yes, these large events affect businesses, but small business owners and, citizens of the country tend to have a way to figure things out and adjust and adapt to the new situation. So I thought that was a great point that he brought up.
Yeah, we've seen that even during the economic downturn, you see the fast casual restaurants that those kind of concepts rise because they were less expensive to eat at, and people still want to go out to eat no matter what the economic situation is. We see things like disasters affect things. So people still get around it. I mean, they still want to go out to eat. They still want to get entertained. They still have to buy goods and services. So, I think even in the zombie apocalypse, there's going to be a line at the Starbucks.
Yeah, I know. People have to have their Frappuccinos, right? But and we talked about, I think it was back on the landlord show, but, certain times of downturns or changes, it brings new or different opportunities, right? So I think educating yourself as a business owner on, how these changes or downturns would affect your business and what additional opportunities it would create. Like we talked about, renegotiating your lease in a downturn, right? That's always a good thing to do to try and take advantage of some cost savings. But there's other companies and lots of companies that are born in great recessions and great depressions and really thrive.
Well, I think small business has the ability to be a lot more nimble, adept, quickly change, morph, sometimes a lot better than big businesses do. So absolutely, these kind of things create opportunities. And you've seen some big companies come out of, I can't think of one off the top of my head, that come out of necessity.
And then the last interview we have too is we have a lobbyist talking about really how to have your voice heard in the government and some initiatives we've been working on. But since the government shutdown is fresh in our minds, there was a lot of effects that did trickle down to small business owners, from the SBA to the IRS shutting down. And I think this show should be helpful just to understand, one, what are these potential risks or effects for your business, and then two, also how can you have your voice heard?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you saw actually small businesses kick in during the economic downturn, whether they were giving out discounts or free meals or all kinds of things for government workers. So, again, adaptation and flexibility and, opportunity. So we're going to hear from our guests.
Yeah. Hope you enjoy the show. Transworld Business Advisors is the world's largest business brokerage and mergers and acquisitions firm with over 500 brokers in nearly 200 offices worldwide. Transworld's team handles thousands of business sales every year. To be connected with a qualified business broker or learn more about the buying and selling process, visit tworld.com/the deal board or call 888-719-9098.
Hey, we're back, and we have a very special guest with us right now. We have Jeff Taylor of USGRI, which is a government relations firm, also known as a lobbyist, and they do great work for our industry, the intermediary industry. And we've been working with Jeff for a long time on a piece of legislation that'll help small business owners get capital, perhaps through stock sales, which is a long, complicated story. We don't have time for that today. But what I wanted to talk to you, Jeff, about today is I wanted to talk about, we just went through an economic shutdown, a government shutdown, and it certainly affected the small business economy. And, sometimes small businesses don't feel like they have a voice in Washington. So why don't you give us just an overlay of, how does small business get a voice? And, does it really help to write letters? Why don't you give us a little overview? First of all, introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Well, thanks, Andy. Yeah, it's Jeff Taylor, and I'm a lobbyist in Washington. And, these days it's easy to kind of beat up on lobbyists. But on the other hand, actually small businesses, when they group together in either industry associations or, small business groups that have one or two key issues, they don't cover the whole waterfront, but maybe there are two or three issues they want to convey to their members of Congress and the key congressional committees. They might hire a small lobbying shop like mine to kind of help them circumnavigate Capitol Hill. But yes, I mean, literally every industry under the sun has a industry association of Washington, the broadcasters, the realtors, the home builders. And, if small businesses, frankly, should try to become members of those kinds of industry associations, even at the smallest level, because even at the smallest entry level, you get benefits from the associations. But when you really have to go to the mat on a very specific issue, the one you and I were talking about earlier with regard to M&A brokers, very rarely are you able to introduce a piece of legislation, and within 9 months it passes the House, it passes the Senate, and the President of the United States signs it. It's always an education process. You have to go meet with the key members of Congress on certain committees. You've got to get people to get enthused about why the legislation is necessary. And one of the ways you do this is by getting your members to actually write letters. So you're right that if just one person sends a letter to a member of Congress on some esoteric issue, it kind of gets bucked down the line. You'll get a response, but very rarely will it actually move a member of Congress. I will say parenthetically that when I worked for a member up on Capitol Hill, one person sent one letter about an issue, and it caught the eye of my member of Congress. It was basically the marriage penalty tax, the tax that happens when you get married and it pushes you up into a higher tax bracket. This letter came from a husband and wife that said they had just gotten divorced in order to take they're still together, but in order to take their tax burden considerably lower. And that caught the eye of my Congressman David McIntosh. We introduced a piece of legislation, and it got passed in the House and Senate. President Clinton vetoed it, but the next year President Bush signed it. So this one letter from someone in a small town in Indiana changed the marriage penalty tax in the United States of America. So it does work, but when you can corral a number of people, M&A brokers all across the country, and weigh in with all of their members with a lot of letters, with a lot of messages, get your lobbyists on the exact same song sheet, get a good piece of legislation introduced, and then just keep pushing the ball up the hill. It'll at at some point pass. And in fact, with ours, we've been at it now for 2 years, but we were as close as you could get last year. And now we think in this Congress, we'll be able to push it over the goal line.
Well, that's great advice. I mean, listen, to get anything done, any complicated process like selling a business, we always tell people you need the right advisors. And what we've learned as an industry, and by the way, I am so happy to hear you support people continuing to join their industry associations and back those kind of funds to go to war, to sometimes go to war for your industry and go to war for small business because, again, things could change in a heartbeat. And then all of a sudden you're outside looking in tariffs, laws, government shutdowns. So you see all these things and you need someone by your side who can knock on the door. And like you said, we've had the same legislators involved in this process and they believe in our cause and they keep bringing it back to Congress, and that's essential. So having someone like yourself on the ground is also essential to the process. So, why don't you give a little bit more light on, some of the things that, small businesses or even an association could start thinking about to perhaps go up against a tariff or go up against to help end the shutdown, those kind of things?
Well, one of the first tricks you want to do, and it's hardly a trick, but most people completely forget about it all the time, is that you don't have to go to Washington. Each member of Congress has a local office. In fact, usually they have 3 local offices because their congressional districts are, fairly large. So they'll have one north, south, east, and west, and they'll have a main headquarters. But you want to talk to the staff people in the district offices or the state offices, not necessarily the Washington office. The staff that are in the district offices tend to be much closer personally and professionally to the congressman than the Washington staff. A lot of times, these are the people who ran their campaigns or they've known these families for forever. And the one thing to do is you want to try and get their buy-in, or you want to try and persuade or convince that staff, the district staff, that this is a issue that the congressman should, at the very least, take seriously and look into. But you might even hit the jackpot where the congressman is convinced, hey, I need to get on board with this issue in a very big way. So you really don't have to come to Washington. You want to zero in on the district staff first. Go over and visit with them. That's their job. Their job is not necessarily to do Washington business. Their job is to interact with the constituents on the ground. And it goes from everywhere from, building a bridge in the district down to finding, the little old lady's Social Security check. That's their job. So you should schedule an appointment to go in, spend about 20 minutes with the staff director or another person in the office. Say, we've got this big bill that, the congressman from the state of Washington introduced. We've got a lot of people in the state of North Carolina that would be supportive of this bill. And so, we'd certainly like you calling ahead to your colleagues in Washington. And maybe the next time we're in Washington, we can visit with that person. And so it's all about being organized, touching all the bases. And the bottom line is, your member of Congress is not supposed to know everything about everything. They don't. It's impossible. So a lot of it is an education process. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a member of Congress with a client, and you sit down for the first 15 minutes and you lay it all out. And the congressman looks at you at the end of the 15 minutes and says, "What the hell are you talking about?" It's completely foreign to the member of Congress. So you kind of have to, continually drip the information, get the staff on board, get the member of Congress on board. And at some point, if you're on the side of the angels, the congressman will figure it out and say, I now understand completely what you're saying. I know how this is affecting your industry. I know how many people are in my state in this industry. So I will now carry your water up here and try to get this bill passed in the House and the Senate. So it's just so very important to kind of have a continual communication with your congressional staff, both on the House side and the Senate side.
Well, that's amazing advice, Jeff. And I really appreciate you coming on today and talking about this and talking about how, these kind of things can affect small businesses and how they could perhaps do something about it. And that's great advice to get local with it too. So, Jeff, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how best to reach you?
Our website is US, as in Uncle Sam, USGRI.com. And it gives you what we do for a living, and it gives you some biographies of our key colleagues at USGRI, and of course there's an email there. So that's kind of the best way to reach us if you want.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for coming in today.
Thank you, Andy.
Hey, Andy, you know what time I think it is? I think it's time to talk about our deal of the week.
Deal of the week. Hey, we're back and we're here with Deal of the Week, and we have a very special guest with Mike Veltri of Tulsa. And he's with, of course, Transworld Business Advisors of Tulsa. And he did an interesting deal in the technology space that had some issues. So, Michael, why don't you give us a little bit of background about the business? What was the issue and how you overcame it?
Yeah, the business was a business that did a lot of contractual work, mostly over the internet, and had agreements set up. And so it didn't have a whole lot of assets. So it was a difficult business to sell because you needed to find a cash buyer. The business was cash flowing quite well, though. And so the asking price was $3 million. Fortunately, we did find a buyer who was a cash buyer for the $3 million. He liked the cash flow. So we were trying to go through the deal. And part of the problem we ran into, though, was that all the contracts, of course, were in the name of the original company. And the buyer did not want to assume all the liabilities or anything like that of the existing company. So the attorneys and accountants were saying this deal cannot be done, and they were ready to, cancel the whole deal. I said, of course, that, we can probably find a way to get around this. And after giving it, some thought, basically what I came up with was that what we would do is we'd take the original company and change the operation of that original company and make it into just a collection agency. And all the proceeds of the collections would then be transferred to the new company. And therefore, it avoided any sale of stock, and both companies could remain intact. And the new LLC would end up getting all the money from the existing contracts.
That was brilliant. So, and that's what we do here at Transworld. We have to think outside the box. We have to work with with their advisors that are saying this can't be done or that's liability can't be overcome. And we do that. So $3 million, how much did the company earn? Was it a big multiple?
Yeah, it was actually pretty close to $1 million that they were making a year.
So it was a 3-time multiple. So that's, a fair price for a business. And obviously it had some things to overcome. So a 3-time multiple on a technology business it might sound a little low, but, obviously there was some issues to overcome. So that sounds like a great deal. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you, Andy.
Hi, we're back. And today's topic, we're talking about global economics. And we talk a lot about small businesses and we're always fascinated about how macroeconomics is going to affect the small businessman. And here in the United States, we have government shutdowns and we have things like economic ups and downs. And so we always want to check in with our top brokers in the world to see how things are going where they live. And so we are going to check in right now with Michael Ziff. Again, he's the chairman of Transworld Business Advisors of the UK and London. And welcome back, Michael. He's been on before, and we want to talk about, and we could specifically talk about Brexit. I mean, it's certainly a big topic in England and of course across Europe about being a part of the European Union. And so how do you think that's going to kind of trickle down to the small business person?
Brexit is certainly creating a lot of uncertainty in Britain. This week, we've obviously seen it in Parliament. On Tuesday, the Prime Minister lost her proposal, and it was defeated very heavily. Interestingly, though, on Wednesday, when the opposition brought a vote of no confidence in the government, the opposition was resoundingly beaten. We now move on to the next stage of what's likely to happen. Uncertainty does nobody any good at any time. And everybody's worry in 2016 when the vote took place was, what is uncertainty going to look like? We've seen it in the collapse of the pound, from 150 down to 118 and now back to 130 to the dollar. And that has an effect on the cost of importing into the United Kingdom. So that's the first issue. What else is Brexit? The press love to sell bad stories, difficult stories, bad news. I guess that's what sells the press. Showing pictures of ports being blocked because lorries aren't able to process documentation to get through either in Calais or in London or in Dover or other parts of the country is clearly going to create a lot of problem. But the reality of it is Britain trades billions with Europe, and Europe trades billions with Britain. And at the end of the day, this product that's resourced either way is not going to be re-resourced out of China, America, or any other part of the world any quicker. The world isn't going to change that rapidly.
So these global events like Brexit and these votes and, we always see kind of a slowdown during the presidential year elections here in the United States. We're always fascinated by those kind of things. And, again, we've talked about this before, but there's always opportunity in either any upside or downside in a marketplace. I think we spoke a little bit about, how hard it is during an upside to get landlords to give you a decent rent so you can make margin. So uncertainty certainly helps everybody get better leases, perhaps buy better and take advantage. So small business owners, there's certainly always a silver cloud, as we said before. So what kind of opportunities do you think there'll be during Brexit or even, once the economy slows a little bit?
There's a group of people that we know who are getting to an age, probably mid-60s to 70s, the baby boomers. They have decided, do they want to live through another period of uncertainty? And many of them are now coming to the conclusion and saying, you know what, I'm in my 60s, I've had enough. Some of them even in their 50s have had enough. They don't want the fight anymore. They don't have the skill sets of the younger people. They don't get themselves, they don't understand the world of IT and technology. And basically, those people are coming round to the view that they want to sell their business. Many of the businesses are very good businesses. So the question then is to find buyers for those businesses. And that's the interesting challenge. And it's a positive challenge as well, because some of these people who are wanting to exit their business, their children don't necessarily want to go into that business. But it therefore gives the opportunity for people to sell their business and for somebody like Transworld to assist in selling those businesses.
That's great. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today and talking a little bit about some of the global economics and some of the big things that happen that affect small business. Thanks for your time and appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much indeed. And if anybody wants to contact me, my number is 07712 867 215, UK number. And if you want to look at our website, it's www.tworlduk.co.uk. All the best, Andy, and thank you very much indeed.
Hey, Jessica, you know what time it is?
Money time?
Almost. It's time for Listing of the Week. Yes, we're back with Listing of the Week. And actually, we have two listings. It's an interesting story. And Mike Veltri is here again from our office in Tulsa. And he has two companies that we think might be a perfect target for someone to roll them up and do big things with it. Michael, why don't you tell us a little bit about them?
Thanks, Andy. We have two listings. Both are in wood manufacturing, fixture manufacturing for the home remodeling industry. Both end up making a high quality product. The one company is bigger than the other company. It is, listed at about a $3.2 million price tag, and he's making roughly $750,000 a year. He has offices nationwide, and he deals with distributors nationwide. He has actual salespeople in 4 major metroplexes around the country. The second business also does make a high quality wood product for the home remodeling industry. It does not compete with the first company's products. However, it could complement them. His business is being sold for $1.2 million, and he makes roughly a SDE of $250,000 to $300,000. If you combine the two businesses together, you can look at them as a bigger operation, and the smaller business would actually benefit from the sales force of the bigger company immediately. But there's also synergies between the two businesses. They both buy the same materials, the same amount of wood and types of wood, finishes. Their tradespeople have the same kind of skills. And of course, they're dealing with the same marketplace out there. And as far as some of the overhead goes, they only need one purchasing agent. They just buy more than they were before instead of having two. So there's a tremendous amount of synergies there. If you look at the combined SDE between the two businesses, it's around $1 million. If you get the synergies out of it, it could be 1.5 or maybe even $2 million just because of the increased amount of sales that you might get. So for a total purchase price of roughly $4.5 million, you get an immediate $1 million SDE with a potential of anywhere between $1 to $2 million of synergy savings.
Wow, that sounds like a great deal. And so if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
You can contact us at the Tulsa Transworld office, and our phone number is 918-401-0198. Or you can contact us on our email at pmveltri@tworld.com.
Great having you in today. Thanks so much, Mike.
Hi, welcome back to the show. And we have John Wahl with us from Live Oak Bank today. And he's going to educate us a little bit on what the SBA is. So, John, welcome back. Thanks for joining us again.
Good morning, Jessica. Thanks a lot for having me. It's a great day. The government's currently open, so keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So today we're talking a little bit about, governments and small businesses, and we wanted to have you on to talk about the SBA. So just from a high level, what is the SBA?
Well, thanks a lot. The SBA is a program that was created back in the early 1950s. And the main purpose of it was to have a resource for banks and borrowers to find funding that would not traditionally fit with conventional commercial lenders. Either it be longer terms, less down payment, less requirements for collateral, or other general conditions that a normal commercial bank would not provide to a borrower.
Okay. So, it's a program. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions that people have is they think the SBA lends money, which is not the case. But talk a little bit about how does that program that was established in the 50s interact with a banker like yourself?
Right. So the most common program that we're going to be talking about today is called the SBA 7A program. And there is a really big misconception when it comes to who actually provides the funds. So the SBA is not a giant piggy bank that just provides funds to borrowers at a whim. The way that the program actually works is if you have a bank, for example, like Live Oak Bank, who I work for, which is called a PLP lender or part of the preferred lender program, we are able to underwrite loans and approve them autonomously from the SBA because of our certification. And what the SBA actually does is they provide a guarantee of a percentage of the loan. That guarantee, depending on the type of program, can be 50%, 75%. The USDA program goes up to 80%. But the traditional guarantee they provide on the 7A program is 75%. And what that really means is that we as a lender have to underwrite to certain criteria and make sure that we are using reasonable and prudent underwriting to make sure that we get repaid and therefore that the SBA gets repaid. The challenge too is that everybody thinks that, the SBA is a tax base on the citizens of the U.S., and that's not the case. It's actually a non-subsidized program of the U.S. government. The losses that they pay out are from the SBA guarantee fees that borrowers pay as part of participating in the program. So that's another misconception on where the funds for the program come from.
I didn't know that. So it's almost like it's self-funded, especially for those the losses that I'm sure that some do occur, right? Probably not many, but I did not know that. So, it sounds like it's a fantastic program. We use it for a lot of loans. From my perspective, it reduces the risk for bankers and banks. So you guys can be a little bit more aggressive with these small business startup and acquisition loans. But we just had a lengthy government shutdown. So let's talk a little bit about how does that affect this SBA process? Did it freeze loans up for you? What happened?
It did. So even as a preferred lender, the light switch at the SBA has to be on. We use a system called eTran that once we have collected all the necessary information on a loan, we send our approval over to the SBA. But there's got to be an answer on the other side. So for a lot of borrowers, it really negatively impacted them. Not just borrowers, but sellers as well, because over the last 34, 35 days, when this government shutdown occurred, unless you had that authorization number from the SBA, you weren't able to close on your loan. And I know that impacted a lot of people, and they're still trying to dig out from that. As of today, when I spoke to some closers, the SBA authorization system is still processing some of that backlog. They don't have a formal queue that tells you where you are in line like they had on some of the previous shutdowns, but they hope to be able to clear that out within the next week.
Yeah, I was at an event yesterday and somebody from the SBA was there. I heard $900 million in backlog in loans. Does that sound about accurate to you?
I wouldn't doubt it. The first quarter, January and December, are typically pretty busy parts of the year. So, and one differentiation that I think is important for the listeners to know is the difference between PLP and GP. The GP is what's called the general program that a lot of banks out there that are not SBA experts participate in. And in that process, they typically will underwrite it internally, and then they send the whole file to the SBA. The SBA will assign an underwriter to that. They will do their own type of financial analysis and critiquing of that, and then provide a decision from their standpoint. That process typically, without a government shutdown, can take 30 or 45 days, and then you add a backlog of where things are at. And my guess is that's probably, a 60 to 120 day backlog of what they have under that type of general program.
Right. So that's just a question, listeners, if you're meeting with a bunch of different banks, you can just ask them if they're a preferred lender, right, John?
Absolutely. And if you're not sure, you can ask the lenders, or you can look up online. A lot of the small business development companies, or SBA.gov is a great resource to find a PLP lender.
Awesome. Well, I think overall SBA, the program has still generated a lot of economic activity in the form of loans for 7A. And we didn't talk about, but they also have a 504 program to purchase real estate or equipment. But, I think this has been great, John, and given us some good insight about how the program has worked and cleared up some misconceptions about what the SBA actually is. So, John, if anybody's looking to purchase a business and needs a lending contact, how can they get a hold of you?
Absolutely, Jessica. They can reach me at 303-551-4453, or if they would prefer to email me, my email is john.wahl@liveoak.bank.
Great. And we'll drop those into the show notes for the listeners too. Well, John, thank you so much. I'll let you get back to work. I know you've got a busy backlog to clear, but thanks for joining the show again.
Jessica, it's always a pleasure to speak with you and your listeners. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for tuning into our show today. If you like the podcast, don't forget to subscribe through your favorite podcasting app and leave us a review. If you have questions or suggestions for the show, visit us at tworld/thedealboard or email us at thedealboard@tworld.com.